She had traveled 800 miles by stagecoach, with her heart full of hope and a worn carpet bag clutching the letters that promised a new beginning, only to step onto the dusty street of Silver Creek and learn that the man she was supposed to marry had been crushed in a mine collapse 2 days prior. The hotel clerk shrugged with the casual cruelty of a town that had seen too many broken dreamers pass through, telling her she could wire home for fair money or find work in the saloon upstairs. But either way, she could not stay in his lobby without coin. With no family to call upon back east and every last dollar spent on the journey west, young Eliza Brennan found herself sitting on a bench outside the assay office, staring at the muddy thoroughfare while the brutal reality of her abandonment settled over her like a burial shroud. A few townsfolk glanced her way with pity, but pity in a mining camp was as worthless as fool's gold. And by nightfall, the temperature had plummeted so sharply that her breath came in thin, ghostly wisps beneath the flickering lantern light. Just when the cold had begun to numb not only her fingers, but the last fragile shred of her hope, a shadow fell across her, and she looked up into the weathered face of a cowboy whose eyes held a sorrow that seemed to recognize her own. This man, whose name she would later learn was Jonah Blackwood, had been the one who pulled her fiancé's broken body from the collapsed tunnel, and the guilt of surviving when his friend had not had haunted him every sleepless night since the accident. Without asking permission or offering flowery promises, Jonah simply lifted her carpet bag, wrapped his own heavy coat around her shivering shoulders, and informed her in a voice as rough as gravel that he owned a small cabin 3 miles outside town and she would be staying there until proper arrangements could be made. Eliza, too exhausted and defeated to argue with a stranger who might have had ulterior motives, found herself being helped onto the back of a gentle mar and led through the darkness toward a small but solid homestead tucked beneath the shelter of a rocky ridge. For the next several days, Jonah slept in the hayloft while Eliza took the single bed, and he never once made her feel like a burden or an obligation, simply leaving warm meals on the table and giving her the space to grieve a future that had been stolen before it ever truly began. She learned through quiet observation that Jonah had once been a Union Army medic, a man who had seen so much death on the battlefields of Shiloh and Antietam that he had retreated to the mountains seeking a solitude in which he could forget the faces of the men he could not save. Yet, here he was, gently changing the bandages on a wounded stray dog he had found by the creek, and Eliza realized that the solitary cowboy had never truly stopped being a healer, no matter how fiercely he tried to hide behind his gruff silences and calloused hands. Just when the fragile rhythm of their strange arrangement had begun to feel almost like safety, a fever born of exposure and exhaustion seized Eliza with such ferocity that by morning she was delirious, her skin burning to the touch while her body shook with violent chills. Jonah recognized the signs of pneumonia instantly, and he also knew that the only doctor within 100 miles lived on the other side of the mountain pass, a treacherous route that would soon be swallowed by the blizzard already gathering its fury among the jagged peaks. What happened next would be recounted in every mining camp and ranch house across the territory, a tale of such selfless courage that hardened prospectors wept openly when they heard it. With the storm howling like a living beast and snow already piling deep against the cabin door, Jonah wrapped Eliza in every blanket he owned, strapped her unconscious form to a makeshift travois he had hammered together from fence rails and harness leather, and began dragging her toward the mountain. The wind tore at his exposed face with claws of ice, the deep snow sucked at his boots with every step, and the path wound along sheer drops where one misstep would send them both tumbling into the frozen abyss below. Hour after agonizing hour, Jonah leaned forward into the blizzard, his muscles screaming and his lungs burning, whispering the same words over and over like a prayer. "I will not let you die. Not here. Not after everything you've already lost." When the travois finally splintered against a hidden rock and collapsed into a useless heap of broken wood, Jonah did not pause to rest or despair, but instead hoisted Eliza directly onto his back, her limp arms draped around his neck as he continued the impossible climb with nothing but raw, stubborn will. He crossed the frozen creek by plunging through the ice himself rather than risk her getting wet, the frigid water stealing the breath from his body so violently that he nearly blacked out. Yet he kept moving forward on feet that had long since lost all feeling. At the summit, where the wind screamed with such fury that it tore the hat from his head and sent it spinning into the void, Jonah finally collapsed to his knees in the snow, his strength utterly spent, and for one terrifying moment, he believed they would both freeze to death within sight of salvation. It was then that a hunting party from the far side of the mountain, men who had been tracking a wounded elk, stumbled upon the crumpled figures of the cowboy and the woman he had refused to abandon. They carried both of them to the doctor's cabin, where the old physician worked through the night, shaking his head in disbelief as he treated Eliza's fever and Jonah's frostbitten extremities, muttering that he had never seen such foolish, magnificent bravery in all his years on the frontier. Eliza woke 3 days later in a clean bed with the scent of wood smoke and healing herbs in the air. And the first face she saw was Jonah's, his beard crusted with ice even indoors, and his hands wrapped in bandages that could not hide the damage the cold had inflicted upon his strong, gentle fingers. She reached out and touched his cheek, tears streaming down her face as she realized that this man, who owed her absolutely nothing and who had already been shattered by so much death, had nearly killed himself to save a stranger who had arrived in town with no claim on his heart. Jonah, unable to speak past the emotion lodged in his throat, simply covered her small hand with his bandaged one and gave her a look that said everything words could never adequately capture. In the weeks that followed, as winter slowly surrendered to the first brave green shoots of spring, Eliza regained her strength, and Jonah regained the use of his frostbitten hands. And together they learned that the deepest bonds are not forged in easy times, but in the crucible of shared suffering and unwavering devotion. They were married beneath the same rocky ridge where his cabin stood, with the doctor and the grateful hunters in attendance, and the simple ceremony was a testament to the fact that sometimes the wrong groom dies so the right one can live and love more fully than either of them had ever imagined possible. Eliza would later say that she had crossed the country expecting to find a husband in a mining town, but instead she found a man who carried her over a mountain and into a life far richer than any gold seam could ever yield. If this story of extraordinary sacrifice and unexpected love has stirred your heart, then you already understand why we at Western Tales Official pour our passion into bringing these authentic frontier legends to a worldwide audience that still believes in the power of compassion. We genuinely invite you to press that like button, subscribe with the notification bell activated, and share your thoughts in the comments below, because every single message you leave reminds us that these stories matter and that kindness still resonates across time. Remember that the truest measure of a man is not found in how many miles he travels, but in how willingly he carries another's burden when the rest of the world has chosen to walk away.